Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Powered by the Monroe County Reporters. Here are your hosts, Jason Harwood and Jacob Litton.
Welcome to Talking Grit, where we talk grit now, but when the Lions win that Super Bowl, yeah, we're going to be talking something else. I am Jason Harwood. Jacob Litton is here as well. Well, it's been a crazy week, right? And we're going to talk about all of it right here. But we brought someone special on. We're so happy to have this guest on. You know him from the Boss Up, Ball Out podcast. It's the real deal, Professor Curt Steele. Welcome to the show, Curt.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Glad to be on, man, with you guys. Been following you guys for a little bit now, man. You guys got a nice little movement going on. And what better ever platform to talk Lions, man, as Talking Grit. So let's talk some grit.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I like it. All right. First of all, Curt, I know you were in the service, so I just want to say thank you for your service to this country before we get started with the show. I know Jacob feels the same as I do.
Thank you. I appreciate this support.
Yep. All right, Jacob, I'm going to let you start right out with your question that we hound all our new guests with. Go ahead.
All right, Curt. I just like to ask this to everybody just so that, us and the people listening get an idea for how long you've been in it. So when you first became a Lions fan, if you think back when you first started really caring about it, really, started watching the team week in, week out, who was the quarterback of the Lions when you first became a fan?
First quarterback that I was a fan of at the Detroit Lions was Eric Hipple.
Okay. That's the first one that we've had that says Eric Hipple, so I like it.
I'm a little older, man, my first favorite Lion was Billy Sims. I watched him Kung Fu Billy with the kick in the face.
Yeah.
The Houston, because I was a Steelers fan growing up, because all my mom's side, which I was really close with, they were all Cowboys fans because my uncle taught my grandmother football after church. And the only team that was on after church was the Cowboys. And he was a Steelers fan because he hated the Cowboys. So I hated the Cowboys too. So I became a Steelers fan. Then when I started watching football for myself, that was the Billy Sims moment, and I was hooked ever since. And then it really skyrocketed after Barry Sanders joined the team.
That's great, because you just mentioned the name I wanted to ask you about. So I was like 9 when Barry got drafted. So when I got into the Lions, Barry was kind of like there already. My dad got me super excited about this running back, said, you got to watch this guy. So what was your feelings when the Lions drafted him? Because if you're friends of Eric Hipple, that's before Barry. So what was your feelings, level of excitement when you got Barry Sanders?
It was off the charts because, you look at that, I was like, wow, this guy is really, really something special. I was in high school then, and, my fandom was really starting to charge up, and I was like, wow, this guy's great. And I was actually in the military during the season when they went to the NFC Championship game. So kind of lost, it wasn't the same back then because, you move out of Michigan, there's not a lot of coverage outside of the state, especially back then, of the Lions, but to get them on a national stage and watch them in Texas play football, man, it was great.
Yeah, for later on, so Thurman Thomas was ahead of Barry at Oklahoma State. Mm-hmm. And so I remember my dad telling me that, the stories were like Thurman Thomas was this great back, but, the backup's even better than Thurman Thomas. And yeah, Barry had still an all-time great college season. Still amazing numbers that he put up. And yeah, I was always curious what a Lions fan that was before Barry, what the thought was of getting him in. Because he didn't even start the first game with Arizona. They brought him in later on because he didn't sign right away, right?
No, he did not. Didn't sign right away. Also, I remember watching his Heisman ceremony when he was over in Japan, and it was like the excitement was electric, man. Even though I wasn't in the state, I was, like I said, I was in the military then. It was something that you knew something was coming. Like you knew something special was coming to the NFL, and we just happened to get it in Detroit, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to the franchise.
His runs were electric. Just watching the game was so exciting because you knew, he might have those negative runs, and I know that was the knock on Barry. He'd have a lot of negative runs, but you knew a 40-yarder, a 50-yarder, or even a 5-yarder that was going to look amazing was about to pop. It's hard to explain how exciting that was.
Yeah, even talking to I've talked to Herman Moore and I've talked to Lomas Brown about Barry and that during that time. I've worked with those guys over at Lions Nation Unite, so hearing Lomas Brown talk about blocking for Barry and and it was a thing of beauty. Even hearing Rodney Peete recently. He said he couldn't execute fakes because he was too busy watching Barry run the ball. Like it's like
Nice.
Like I became the worst guy at fakes taking out because I just wanted to watch the show once he got the ball.
Yeah, I remember the one time where I think Rodney Peete like stuck his arms up in the air and Barry was still in the backfield and he just like knew it was going to be a touchdown because Barry had just cut it back, the opposite way of the field. But it's good reminiscing with you, Curt, but we got lots to talk about.
Let's get to it, baby.
We thought, when we gassed you on, we're going to talk about Lions roster and we're still going to do that. But obviously news broke late afternoon today. Micah Parsons goes to the Packers. We're going to have to hit on that. I can't tell you what my text said to Jacob, the first text, because we don't talk like that on this show. But what was your first feeling when you saw the news, Curt? Bold. Mine was not, I can tell you that.
You know what? I text, we have a group text for Lions Nation Unite, some of the creators over there, and for my show, for Bossa Ball Out. For Bossa Ball Out, I typed and I typed so. And then for the LNU, I said and. I'm not concerned with Micah Parsons. And you know why? This guy right here. That guy right there. He showed some. I think he's had 2 sacks in the games he's played against the Lions. And I'm looking at. Here's my thing. You look at the trade in itself, right? So I'm looking at the trade and I'm saying, okay, they got 2 first-round picks. But then I saw who they included in the trade to the Cowboys. I'm like, you just gave your best run defender to the Cowboys and brought over an edge defender. I'm like, and we all know Micah Parsons is a great pass rusher. That guy, we know what he can do. And it's going to be, you're going to have a short clock with him and Rashawn Gary when you go back to throw the ball. What they don't do, either one of them, is set the edge in the run game. So what do? You run up, you run behind big number 58, the top offensive lineman in the top 100. And you just run the ball down their throats because you can run at Micah Parsons all day. He is terrible at run defense. So just run the ball. Wherever he lined up, you run at him. So, see, I was like, I wasn't scared of Micah Parsons.
I'm not scared of him from a Lions perspective. It's just that I don't want to make their record better. But Jacob, you haven't talked yet, and I want to get you in on this. What's your initial feelings? And go on.
Yeah, initial, when you first see the news, I see the rumors before. I was like, there's no way they're going to do that. That's not going to happen. Initial feeling was like, well, that's just great. Honestly, my first initial feeling was I wish we had recorded our preview episode after this trade information came out. Curt, we recorded our preview episode last night, and I was not so kind to the Packers. I thought the Packers were going to kind of tank. Now I feel a little bit differently. I feel like they might do a little better. Yeah, instant immediate reaction, concern because the Packers got better. They got a better pass rush. And then you see that they gave up Kenny Clark, and you see they gave up the first round picks, and you see that they paid him the most money for any non-quarterback. I saw they're now the first team in NFL history to have just 2 players equaling over $100 million counting against the cap. They didn't learn their lesson with Jordan Love. Micah's also got some sort of injury that he's battling through. Who knows how long that's going to linger, if he's even going to be ready right away. This is just going to be very interesting for them and for the league as a whole. It was just a big trade right before the season starts. I don't remember this happening. He's, in his prime. I don't know anybody else that's been traded like this right before the season. The only thing I could think of was like when Von Miller got traded and was, that was to the Rams, but Von Miller got traded for like, yeah, and he got traded for, second, third round picks or late round picks or whatever. The Packers basically just said, here we go, we are going all in, which is ironic because some of the Lions fans wanted this. We didn't. We've talked about this several times. We don't want to go all in for this season. We don't want to trade. I think I saw one that was like, oh, well, the Lions will just trade Brian Branch in a first. Absolutely not. I don't want to trade anybody. I don't want to trade any first. So yes, no, I'm relieved that now we don't have to listen to that anymore.
I agree. So I just want to mention a couple of the details so to catch everybody up in case they haven't. It was 2 firsts and Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark is a 3-time Pro Bowler. He is, he was their run defender and already on a weak run defense, right? So like you're taking that your primary run defender off. It's also going to cost, this is something that you guys haven't mentioned. Taking Kenny Clark off the roster costs $26.3 million in dead cap money per spot track. So like they're taking that money like off their cap right now. That's a huge cap hit. Now you could say, well, it doesn't matter. It's this year's cap. That money rolls over. The Lions know that. That's why we're saving all our money to roll over to next year so we could pay Hutchinson this enormous amount that we're going to have to pay him after this Micah Parsons deal. That money certainly matters. And also it matters because now you have no first round talent the next 2 years unless you trade other assets to get that talent back. That's going to make the Packers, it's going to be tougher to field a competent team. And
real quick, they also have the dead money for Jair Alexander.
Okay.
I don't have the dollar amount, but they've got his dead money too. And I want to say that was between 15 and 20 million.
Yeah. So they only have 3.7 million left on their cap this year. So that means they're going to have to do something to free up because, they're going to have to sign people during the year for injuries and stuff like that. So that's crazy. So obviously we know how it affects the Lions with play on the field, but how's it affect the Hutch deal that's going to come up? And that's why I want to start with you, Curt. Are you prepared to play Hutch 47+ million a year?
Yeah, he's going to. I think what the Lions did was smart as far as extending him, go ahead and picking up his 5th-year option. So you don't have to run and pay him this year. You can kind of like let it kind of expand out, and when the next cap year comes around and you can use some of that TV deal money. Of course, if you extend them during the season, of course, it's not going to really affect the cap this year, but of course, having him on the books already with the 5th-year option makes a difference. But if you make that deal, and I've seen a lot of even some media guys and saying that the Lions took a step back and the Packers moved up, and I'm like, that makes you you're not looking at it holistically. And I'm looking at this like you already have to pay Hutch. So you look at the guys that the Lions have already paying. So, and you add that on top of it, and the guys that they will have to pay next as well. Bringing Micah Parsons in on that deal, is just something that is not a smart move. You know what I'm saying? It would have been a smart move for Hendrickson as well. But you give yourself some flexibility to make a deal with Hutch, and then you can go back to those other guys who have those deals, and they have some flexibility to kind of restructure their deal, move some cap around. So Brad Holmes is playing it smart, man. And for Lions fans who are all up in the row saying we should have did this, I'm like, yeah, that wouldn't have been great for our team. You just don't do that. I just you have that caliber player on your team already. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying you don't want to have 2, but what is it going to cost you? It's going to hamstring your salary cap, and it's going to make it hard to keep building in the future because how Brad is with his first and second round picks. I would say this, the way the Lions have been playing, their first round picks are essentially second round picks, but because they're at the very bottom of the first round. But I still wouldn't have done that, man. Not 2 first round picks, and then you're not allowing your roster to grow, and then you're not going to have any cap space. I'm like, I don't want to be in cap hell again. And we went through that with Bob Quinn and a couple of GMs before him, where we're looking at where we couldn't get quality free agents because the guys we signed, we were overpaying, and we had all this dead cap money, and because you're letting guys go. So, but yeah, I would love to pay Hutch, man. I got my old school Hutch hanging up. I got a plethora of jerseys, yeah. But I decided to wear Penei Sewell because I wanted to counteract the Micah Parsons deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I like it. I like the energy you're saying. Jacob, what's your thought? I mean, I know we wanted the Hutch deal before the Parsons deal just so that, we could save some money. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Do you think this accelerates the Hutch deal because we have some money now and we know what we're aiming? Or do you think this delays it because of how much Micah got?
I'm leaning towards it delaying it now. Obviously, I wanted to have it done ahead of time just because I saw the dominoes falling into place, which Trey Hendrickson's deal obviously was not as high. That was probably fair for him. It wasn't as high as we thought it was going to be. But, Myles Garrett making 40, average of 40. TJ Watt gets 41. We kind of wanted to sign Hutch so that Hutch was the one around 45, 46, and then let Micah, surpass that. Now, that's just the way that it fell. Now Micah's got the average of 47. I feel like that's the bar. There's a reason that Hutch and his agent and everything were waiting. And, I know Brad Holmes said they had been discussing, but it wasn't anything serious. They weren't really getting deep into it. And it's probably for that reason. I don't see the benefit of doing it right now because there's no more, there's no more pieces to fall. There's nobody else that's going to sign before then. He's already going to be hitting that at least 47. So I think we should just push it off. I don't know how much higher that could possibly go. Even if he has a, defensive player of the year season, I don't think it boosts it much more than it's already going to be. it's already sky high. He's already going to be the top 8, in my opinion. So I just don't think there's a rush to get this thing done right now.
I think the advantage of it, and Curt kind of said it, is you got the 5th-year deal. So now you could wrap that all together and you can kind of spread that out. It's what they did with the Sewell deal. And they kind of, you could play some cap manipulation there about where you want the high points to be in your cap. That'd be the advantage of getting it done. And plus, if they care about my sanity, they get it done sooner. So I just know that Hutch is going to be on this team for a very long time. I'm sure Brad
We also
Holmes
have several players
Jason
to worry
Harwood.
about that next year too, though.
I know, but that would be nice to get the Hutch one because Hutch is not leaving. I want to get that done so that we know how much is left, who are we going to have to let go, what are we going to have to do, and then also going into free agency next year, we have a better idea of like, not that we're going to have a lot of money to spend, but we're going to know we're going to be able to have a better budget because we're going to have all that stuff done. Yeah, it was shocking. Micah went. I think for the Lions, the advantage is also that we play them week 1. Micah's got to have 10 days. He, the last preseason game, he's sitting on the medical bench, laying on there during the game without a jersey. And now he's going to be playing. I imagine he's going to play and they're going to have some set packages. But 2 things. It's not going to be a full game. He's not going to do 60 snaps. And 2, how many times have we seen a guy sit out all of preseason and then get injured? And I'm not wishing an injury, but that's got to be a real concern for the Packers, right? I mean, you can't just I don't care how great a player you are. You can't be just sitting on you're not going to be football ready. He hasn't played anything in the preseason. It's not like he hasn't just played the games. He hasn't done any training camp, and you can't be football ready in 10 days. You just can't.
Soft tissue injuries are a concern, hamstring, especially guys who got a lot of speed, especially a guy like, with a lot of bend like Micah Parsons, man. He already has a back issue. So, yeah. It could be, and then, line up against across from, you got to look at Micah Parsons' size. I mean, he's more of an outside linebacker than he is a defensive end. Trying to go past a guy like Penei Sewell or go around Taylor Decker. It's going to be a chore. It's not going to be a happy sight for him his first game in the Packers uniform.
I could tell you what, though, Jacob, our conversation with Dusty, who we're going to have on Wednesday, is going to be a lot different with Micah. He's going to be super excited. And
I want to hear what he thinks about the contract being tied up.
Yeah, I'm curious what, I'm sure he's going to be all for it because, he's going to be excited. Just like we would be excited, like you said, if Micah come here, we'd be super excited. But I would not, I would also see the ramifications down the road and it'd be very short-sighted. But anything else that you guys want to say about Micah before we move on to the actual Lions roster? People on our team?
Pressure's on LaFleur.
It is for sure. All right. First of all, Curt, what's your overall? I know it's a 53-man roster. It started out with 50. We've signed a couple of guys. What was your overall impression when it first got announced? Like, what do you think about the roster in general?
I was a little shocked that it was only 50, then it kind of went to 50. I know they were trying to make some moves, and it's still at 52 right now, but it wasn't. The shock was a couple of guys that that were off the roster, like Dan Skipper. That was a shock to me. But like as far as like looking at the roster as a whole, I wasn't. I'm looking at the roster like, yeah, that's about where it should be. I mean, those are the guys, those are your starters and your second, your second string players. I wasn't like shocked that it was like 50 instead of 53 because I'm like, he's setting up to make some moves and he did that. But we stay healthy, man. This roster is loaded, especially like the first and second string. Like people were talking about the preseason. Oh, we lost all these preseason games. Like, dude, like calm down. It's preseason. But most of the guys that played the majority of the snaps in preseason aren't even on the roster. A lot of those guys, they're on the practice squad. They're not even on the team anymore. So the majority of their first and second string didn't play either didn't play at all or didn't play much. Like I think Avonte Maddox only played like one game. Like you saw him out there at the last preseason game. You didn't see him out there doing the Hall of Fame game or anything like that. So like the roster itself, we got a loaded secondary. Our defense is going to be nasty. I think the strength of our defense right this year is the linebacker core. You got 6 guys that can start. Like you got 6 starters at the linebacker level. That's crazy. Wanted another defensive end because you just don't trust the health of Davenport, of course. But the guy that people are sleeping on the defensive line is DJ Reader. Like he looked excellent in camp. Like people are like they're focusing on Williams, and I'm like the anchor is going to be Reader. He had a full off season, and he hasn't had that in a long time to be healthy and coming into the season, and that defense is going to be something else, man. With the upgrades, with DJ Reed, and then second year Arnold that's just looking scary. Like Terry Arnold's looking really, really good, and of course the best safety duo in the league. And how did Brian Branch not make the top 100 players out of is crazy to me. So,
right.
But the offensive side of the ball, I think you're looking at you stuck Ratledge next to the right guy with Penei Sewell, and they were starting to open up some running. They're going to be opening up some running lanes coming up here soon, especially in Green Bay. And I like Mahogany, what he can do. He flashed last year. He played some good ball last year, and having the flexibility to bring Graham, because he was our backup center the last couple of years. So having him already on the roster, and then people don't realize that he was the starting center for the Lions, I think it was in 2018. So, him and Goff are, they have their communications, and he learned from Franks. I look at this, and the skill positions was where we're really going to shine. J-Mo and St. Brown and the Cybertruck, the new kid, man. I published an article the other day on Sideline Report. 2 articles back to back. 1 week was about Tesla, and his hype train, and then of course with the trade for trading Tim Patrick away, that sets up him to have a bigger role, man. But the kid, you look at him and he is what Tim Patrick was when he first came in the league. Over 6 feet, that 6'4", 6'5"-ish. Fast, I'm saying 4'4", 40, can jump. With all the leg injuries, Tim Patrick lost some of that because, he's like 6'5". He was fast when he first came out, but, of course, all the leg injuries, kind of slowed him down. Good receiver. I love him. He was a great veteran presence in the locker room. But when you have a kid like Tesla, like that hype train was real. And you look at him, what he does in the passing game and what he does in the run game, he fits what a Detroit Lion is. So, And then, of course, with the running backs, man, with Sonic and Knuckles, man, I just can't wait to see these guys on the field, man. And with I think Jameson Williams is going to have a big, big year. I just think he's been up to have a huge year. You saw it last year, and someone was talking to me, and I'm like, Jamo had a bad year. He only had 58 catches. And I'm like, he had 1,000 yards on 58 catches. You just don't do that. Like,
right.
Who do you know that does that? That's exciting. That was like exciting. I'm like, the guy had 1,000 yards on 58 catches. That's ridiculous. So, and then with JG, man, it took me a while to like Jared Goff, man. I got my first jersey last year at the end of last season. No, excuse me, this off season, someone sent me a golf jersey. Someone who follows the show sent me a Lauren Vander Esch, he's one of our channel members, man. He was like, hey, man, I was like, because I had all my jerseys. I was like, I don't have a golf jersey just yet because I had like 8,000 Stafford jerseys. Like I even bought, I went and bought the throwback of his Reebok jersey, his rookie jersey. So like I had all their Stafford jerseys, and it took me a while to roll up to him because of the fact that he was kind of goof when he first got here, not golf, but he didn't have a lot to work with. That roster he was with, then when we got him the last couple of years, we got the LA Rams, high-powered offense, Jared Goff. We're going to have that special offense again this year. I don't know what people are thinking. We're going to take this big step back because we just lost so much stuff. I'm like, I don't see it, man. Like, you guys don't follow this team. Like, you don't know that. Do you guys realize that he was here doing the install of this offense? Like, the OC that we have now, like, and of course, and Shep has been groomed by AG to take over the defense last year. So, but the roster top to bottom, man, we have a really good, if we stay healthy, man, it's going to be a deep, deep run, man. And I'm looking at the Lombardi like, yeah, man, come on. Let's come. It's time to win the big one.
It is. The Agnew said it today. They got playmakers at every level when you look at that. And that's where I like that. We got touch on the line. Like you said, our linebackers, stellar. Terrion's going to take a big step forward. We got DJ Reed and obviously the best secondary. So I really like our defense. Lion King, one of our members at chat here, is he's worried about the offensive line. So Jacob, I'm going to throw it to you. Do you think, how long do you conceivably give this offensive line time to gel? Do you think it's going to happen 1 game, 2 game, second, after the bye? What you thinking?
Well, I was a little unsure at the beginning of training camp because Decker was injured. And I really value getting all of them out there and having them lined up next to each other, seeing how each other works, the play calls and everything like that. Decker came back and it seemed like they, picked right up. Like there was not, the acclimation period seemed very short. Mahogany picked right back up where he was last year. Ratledge thriving where he's more comfortable at right guard. I know Brad Holmes said that maybe still, the plan for the future is to have him play center, but to make the team, what's best for the team right now is to have him at right guard. Our tackles are the anchors. I'm not worried about the offensive line. I know he's talking specifically about Green Bay. I just don't think we're going to have, it'll be interesting later in the season. This first week one, we're not going to have the full strength, Micah Parsons and everything like that. So I'm not worried about the offensive line. I still think they're going to be one of the stronger parts, one of the stronger lines in the NFL. I know you look at position rankings and people have them rated like, 20, 25 just because of the unknowns. I mean, how do you feel about it?
For me, it's going to take time. I think the pass blocking is going to take longer than the run blocking. I think they're going to be run blocking great out the gate, and I'm okay with that because that's essentially the identity of this team, and it also what makes Goff good. Play action pass, all that stuff. The worry is like if there's pressure in Goff's face, especially if it's up the middle, because that's where our inexperience is. I could see that's a valid concern. So I want to see it on the field. Are we going to be able to handle? Is the communication between Tate and Sewell on a stunt? Say Micah runs a stunt and then comes inside on Tate. Is he going to be able to handle that? Those are all valid questions. I think Hank Fraley is going to have this front ready to play. I think Christian Mahogany is real. I fully believe that this guy is the dirtbag that Brett Holmes called him, and I'm okay with that. Graham, the misconception on Graham is that he didn't want to play center. That's all fake news. He said he doesn't like to be put into center like in the middle of a game, like when he's unprepared. But he's been interviewed. I'm pretty sure Justin Rogers probably asked him this question, and he basically said, "No, I love playing center." I think he just needs. He wants to practice there and be ready. I can imagine how hard it would be to practice at guard all week, and then all of a sudden, now you're the center because Frank was injured, and you got to do all the calls. I mean, I can understand not wanting to do that. Graham has, like Curt said, he has the experience at center. He's comfortable there. He likes being there. I'm okay with it, and frankly, I'm glad that they put someone with experience there. And we also forget how experienced is Jared Goff. He could call out protections too. So, I mean, I get it. It's valid. This is new for us. Everything else is established for the Lions. Amon-Ra, J-Mo. I know Tesla is new, but he's also further down on their list. Sam Laporta, who no one has mentioned yet, is going to be the Sam Laporta of the rookie year. He had the last 5-6 games. He was better than his rookie season last year. He was injured early on. He's the real deal. And our 2-back sets. We have one of our chat guys saying we got the 2-back sets, which we're all excited to see. They're going to have this set up. And if we're having problems in the blocking scheme, Brock Wright can be pulled in. They will come up with stuff. We have enough weapons all over that, even if we have to pull one of Tesla off the field, we still got Amon-Ra, J-Mo, and, our backs and two good tight ends. So I'm not worried about it. It will take time to gel. There will be learning mistakes, as Brad Holmes confirmed today. There's going to be rookie mistakes. As Dan has said in the past, it's not so much how you look in September, it's how you look in December. And by December, Tate Ratledge is not going to be a rookie. He's going to have seen his fair share of games. So that's where I'm at with it. As far as the whole roster, I'm super excited about it. We have the most talent I've ever seen top to bottom. And for the general fan that, is just looking at stats last year and think our defense is going to, be middle of the pack. No, we have a top 5 defense if, like Curt said, everyone's healthy. If for some reason Davenport plays more than 8 games, watch out because Hutch is going to break the sack record. It's going to happen. They're going to have nowhere to go. So I'm excited about this season. I know that, the Packers might have the momentum because of Micah, but that momentum's going to be shut down on week 1 when we beat them, when we go into Lambeau and we beat them.
For sure. My concern right from the jump, which I don't know, I want to know how you guys feel about this, but, we waived Ahmed Hassanin with an injury settlement, and we only kept 3 defensive ends on the initial 50-man roster. After the injuries, after we got Davenport, you already mentioned a couple of times. How do you feel? I know now we've signed another guy. We claimed somebody on waivers, but did that concern you at all to see, okay, we're only keeping 3 defensive ends?
You can go ahead, Curt.
Oh yeah, of course. I was like, man, you kept 3 defensive. It was a shocker.
Right.
I don't, but I kind of left it open as far as I don't think Brad Holmes is still, he's still cooking, and and he still have that open roster spot. I believe there's going to be a deal here soon in the next few days that where that's a defensive end is going to be in that spot. We just signed another defensive end, and that's not a great signing. I'm like saying this is the breaking news, but we added a defensive end to the practice squad today. So they reload with the guys that fit the scheme. So we got a guy that's kind of like not Al Hasni, Aquadim Muhammad. That's what kind of guy we picked up, and the defensive end we got from Dallas the other day on waivers. But initially it was a shock of 3 defensive ends, but then I was like, yeah, he's gonna add someone else. And then of course you look at guys like Trey Wingo or Pat O'Connor or something like that. I mean, Kai Wingo, I'm sorry. Those guys are tweeners, so they can slide out at the edge as well. So, am I concerned? No, because I'm sure that Brad and Dan are not finished cooking this meal that is the roster.
I agree. I'm right with you. Like what came out on Tuesday is not what we knew what that wasn't going to be week 1. And also I knew that we were going to get a lot of the guys back. Now, when we get to practice squad, I'm surprised that Nate Lynn's not on there. I fully expected him to be on the practice squad. I knew that those same guys that were in camp, we're going to bring up, and those are going to be your backups. Davenport made it through training camp healthy, so he's going to go into week 1 healthy, right? So that's good. He plays, he'll probably like 50, 60% of snaps. You got Hutch on the other side that plays like 95% of snaps. So, you don't need that much. And like you said, you got a bunch of tweeners that can bounce outside. I'm not overly worried about what about you, Jacob? Were you?
I would have liked to have more depth there, but then that was also one of those things where, if we're only keeping 3, then surely we're going to be making some waiver claims, or, is Zadarius on his way back to the building? Like, what are we trying to plan here? But, after hearing the press conference with Brad Holmes where, they asked him, he said, we cut it down to 50 this year. I thought it was awesome. I loved it. I don't think it'll be the last time you see that. They're really taking on like the standard is the standard. And I know he had that reporter ask him, and he was like, why, yes, we have 53 spots, but why, if there's only 50 people that met the standard, why would I keep 3 extra? And, why would I give them a spot on the team to essentially then just release them and make room for somebody else in a couple of days anyway? So it makes me feel like the people that are here, barring injury, at least for, the time being, and we've only got 1 spot left open. So, like Curt already said, we need to get another defensive end in here.
So you just brought up the 50 players thing. I could talk for like an hour on that because I thought about it all. Curt, you saw the press conference today, correct? Okay. So, that was Dave Burkett that asked that question. Like, why aren't you keeping the best 53 and then you're going to keep, your 50? And I come off confrontational. I know Brad said that. I listened back and it lessened in my head of the way it sounded initially. Brad and Dan both do the same thing when they are delaying something. They act like they don't understand the question. But Dan will soften the blow with his tone. Brad goes the opposite way. It kind of almost comes back as like almost condescending. That's one thing I don't like about Brad when he does that. Kind of puts me off on him a little bit. I still love, he's the best general manager. He's doing a great job, but that particular part of his personality, I don't really respond well to. There is a greater strategy to what he's saying than we just kept 50. So you're telling me if only 45 guys met your standard, you're only going to keep 45 guys? You're telling me that in years past that they had this same standard and that they've kept 53? That doesn't jive with me either. I don't believe that. I do believe that maybe they said, we're going to put in 2 waiver claims, so why put 2 guys on the roster just to kick them right off? I believe that may be in their mindset, and he's not going to say that out loud. But you also don't know if you're going to get those waiver claims, and you are putting players at risk of losing them because you're just putting them out there. So, it's not a risk-free strategy, and I know a lot of people, I was chatting with a lot of people in Justin Rogers' chat room about this situation. A lot of people will be like, oh, it's so kind to the players because, they don't want to get their hopes up that they made the team and then they're going to instantly cut them. I mean, yes, they probably have some of those concerns, but they're not making business decisions based on that. They are going to do ultimately what's best for the Lions. And so what he said, he doesn't want to talk about the strategy. There's a strategy to leave in open rosters. There's a strategy, in my opinion, releasing all those guys because you want them back on the practice squad. So if I release everybody on the day that everyone releases, there's like 1,000 guys that hits the waiver wire, right? There's no way a GM's going to be able to track all those guys. I'd rather have that as opposed to, okay, I'm going to keep this, I'm going to cut the guy on Wednesday or Thursday. Now there's only 25, 30 guys on the waiver wire. It's much easier to notice that. And I think you could hide guys and get them through the practice squad by cutting them and then asking them to come back. Because you could easily tell the guy, hey, you're 50. If you want to be open with a player, you could also say, we're going to put you on the roster, but just know that we're putting in waiver claims and you're probably going to be cut. That's the same thing of putting it as being open, honest, and you're saving the player. You're saving that player from getting, from us losing them. So I know I went over a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So to that though, we've seen these guys for weeks, and it's apparent that they haven't met the standard that they have put out for Lions players to be part of the team. So, they didn't make the standard. They didn't cut it. So obviously they have to, on some level, be okay with the possibility or the risk of losing them on the practice squad. But then, you cut down to 50. Now we're back up to 52 because we put in these waiver claims and we don't know what we have with these guys. So it's almost like we'd rather, those guys didn't cut it, cut our losses, get new guys in here and see how long do you think the new people have? When we claim them, we have to keep them on the roster for how long? Right.
They have to be on the roster for 3 weeks. The active roster, 53.
Right. So you think this is a 3-week trial period and we're going to be shuffling people around? Or do you think they really did their homework on these guys and these guys are going to be here to stay?
I think the answer is both. But that doesn't answer it because you could still keep the guy, do the waiver claim and kick him off. And then that way you don't risk losing the player. So that doesn't solve that issue. And also, you're saying, we're just going to keep the best, only 50 guys made those standards. Well, those same guys ended up on the practice squad. And who do you think they're going to call up on game day? Those same players that aren't up to your standard. That's where I'm a little pushed back on that. So
I think the answer was more of you don't want to give away the secret sauce. He wants to maintain his level of secrecy of his strategy, but to Brad's credit, no one from the Lions got claimed off waivers.
Mm-hmm.
So all the guys he wanted on the practice squad are on the practice squad. So the only one that Lions fans are kind of like scratching their head, and I have to agree, is Nate Lynn because he played very well in the preseason. But they brought back Cooper, they brought back Agude. They brought back some guys that just added Carter today. So I think they got the guys that they wanted to. And besides Lynn not coming back, but like the guys that didn't want on the roster, like Roderick Martin and Hunter Hooker, like they went elsewhere. I don't even think they even tried to. I think they probably just told them like, "Hey guys, this ain't work out. Good luck somewhere else, but we can't keep you." And the guys that they wanted to bring back, they brought back. No one, like I said, no one got claimed. No Lion got claimed off a waiver. So they brought the guys back they wanted to have back. So it's one of those things where, I get what you're saying. That he could be a little brash as well as for the way he says it. But then he was like, let me pump the brakes. I'm not trying to be confrontational, but this is what it is. And yeah, I think you're right. Dan has a little bit more of a. He had more of that shucksy doodle, he's still straight up about it, what I'm saying? But he has a way to kind of calm the tone down. Whereas you get a guy like, Brad Holmes, don't let him fool you. That guy got a fire inside of him, man. And he's like, and I think the thing that gets him is like, he reads everything on social media. You don't think that guy reads everything? You don't think he reads all the stuff that they were saying? Like, and a lot of the beat writers are writing this stuff about him. And he's like, come on, man, I'm reading this stuff about you guys. What are you asking me here? Like, because he's at the point sometimes where he kind of probably get a little irritated. Like, I've read this stuff. You keep asking me this question. And it's got to be a little tired. You got to get tired of answering the Zadarius Smith questions. You got to get, it's kind of like the draft where I'm around say Brown. He hasn't drafted a receiver, and then he drafts a guy who's a 2-time all first team, all pro guy. So like, he's a great talent evaluator. I think his patience kind of runs thin sometimes with some of the questions you have to answer from the media. But I think everything he does has the best, what's best for the team in mind. And like Red Agnew said, he never does anything without Dan Campbell. Like, and I've been a Lions fan for decades, and I've never seen in the NFL, period, a coach and a GM in such lockstep as I've seen Dan Campbell. I can say that.
I agree. Before we move on to the next topic, the last thing I'm going to say is it also the additional strategy of doing this, of releasing them all, you don't let the people know who your 51, 52, and 53 person are on your practice squad. Like, you're hiding that. Like, you're hiding a little bit of your hand of like, who do you really not want to lose on the practice squad, right? Like, Brad doesn't want to say that. I'll say it. I think that that's a strategy. And I think he's smart for doing I'm not against what Brad Holmes is doing. I loved what he did. But if you believe what he's saying, that he didn't understand the question, you're pretty naive. Jacob,
I get you.
Did I go off too much on that, Jacob?
Hey, no, it's fine.
All right, good. All right. So Dan Pass just wants I want to clarify something. He said, a bunch of the guys didn't go through waivers, and so we probably had handshake deals with, these guys at the practice squad, and that's 100% correct. But I'll say one guy that we had an extra spot, and we put Jackson Meeks out on there, and I was a guy that had him on the roster, so I didn't even like the idea of risking losing that guy, but also we get attached to these guys. We follow them every practice, and they're probably bigger legends in our head than they're preseason legends, and I get that. So I trust Brad Holmes, and what you said is, Curt, everybody that we wanted, we got back. And when we get down to the practice squad, I know Nate Lynn's not on there, but Nate Lynn got to choose. Like, he got on waivers. So he may see an opportunity with another team to get on the active roster quicker than the Lions. So it may not be a Lions decision. It may be a Nate Lynn decision. We don't know that until someone were to interview and ask that. Curt, I'm going to move on here. I want to ask you, what was your most surprising move this week? I'm going to just say, it doesn't have to be right at cutdown day, but anything that you've seen this week as far as roster construction, what was your most surprising thing?
For the Detroit Lions, it would probably be Skip. This is because he's been a staple of that offensive line, playing that swing tackle role, playing the big tight end, he played great at left tackle last year. He's played guard, but from the reports I heard out of my performance center, that Jamarco Jones had a really good training camp. So, that was a shocking one for me. And of course, I picked Meeks over Lovett myself. I don't care about the returnability. His hands are trash. Like, Lovett could catch a cold, butt naked in a snowstorm during the preseason, man. It was terrible. But I got there, brought him back in the practice squad. I get it. You know what I'm saying? Those moves, Meeks over Lovett, and that's what I would have picked. Lovett over Meeks, and then Jones over Skip. But both those guys are back on the practice squad, and you never know. A couple weeks down the line, they've done their call-ups, and some other guys are expendable. So, you ship those guys out and you promote to the active roster. I don't think Skipper will be on the practice squad the majority of the season. I think he will be on the active roster.
Yeah, it just depends on the injury bug and, what the offense dictates. Jacob, Ash Soden, who's from the Roar the Lions UK podcast, he DM'd me earlier, and he asked me specifically something that Curt just brought up. Did Jamarco Jones look that much better than Skip in practice? You went to 2 practices. I went to 3. I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes I was way away from the one-on-ones where the defensive line was against the offensive line. And that's probably where I would pick up a lot of stuff. And frankly, watching offensive line play without a replay is very, very difficult for me. Maybe other coaches and people with more experience may be able to do that on the fly. And Jacob, you're much smarter than me. So I'm going to throw it to you. Did you think Jamarco Jones, in your opinion, did you notice that he was better than Skip in the practices that you went to?
I did not. And that's what makes the Skip move surprising to me as well. It's not like Jamarco Jones is that much younger than Skipper, has that much more upside on the surface. And Skip's been around longer. yeah, when we saw it in person, Hutch was in the backfield so consistently. It did seem like he was usually lined up over Skipper. A lot of it was over Manu. I can't say for sure that Jamarco Jones had a great training camp in my eyes. I didn't think that either of them were that impressive. But also, Jamarco Jones was hurt. Like, he was hurt so often, it just seemed like he wasn't, that's what seemed like he wasn't going to be able to make the roster. It's just because he wasn't healthy enough.
Yep. I'm with you. I can't speak intelligently on whether Jamarco Jones was over Skipper. I'm going to trust Dan and Hank and all those guys that make that decision and get paid the big bucks and have made a lot of great decisions over time. But yeah, when that first dropped, that Skipper came out, and then I reached out to Justin Rogers because Justin Rogers broke it. So I just I knew that Justin Rogers and Skip were close. So I reached right out to Justin, and his impression was that he didn't think Skip was coming back. He didn't even know if he's going to get to the practice squad. Justin's thing, I think, was that if Skip gets offered a job at another team, he's at his end of his career. He's going to take that pay because it's like he estimated like $700K a year. And so it didn't sound like to him that it was any roster gymnastics or anything like that. And obviously we only kept 50 guys instead of 53. So there's no roster gymnastics to be had. We didn't put anybody on the IR, to play around with that. And that's the only reason to do roster gymnastics that way. So that was shocking. The Love It Over Meeks thing was the second level of shock for me when that happened. I think a lot of us, I had Meeks over Lovett. I think it came down to draft position and special teams. I think Lovett is a better special teams player, and they saw the value right now. And I think that's what it came down to. It's hard to read into what's real with a wide receiver in the preseason. It just is. But I like the future that Meeks. I like those big, tall wide receivers. And I know we got Tesla, but I like the idea that he's a full X, because Tesla can play X, but he can play all over. So I like keeping that roster flexible. Yeah. I will say, and Dan Pask is asking this, and there is the Hassanin waving of Ahmad Hassanin shocked me until I read the reasoning behind it, and then I was like, genius move. Brad does it again. And so did that blow your mind too, Jacob, when Hassanin was waived with an injury designation?
Yeah, he was the first one I mentioned. That was the most surprising thing to me. Hearing afterward that obviously there's a plan and that, they have an agreement already and he's going to be back with the Lions and he'll be on the field later. This is the roster gymnastics we're talking about, right? These are the little secret moves and stuff that they're doing. But yeah, just seeing that headline was kind of concerning and a little disappointing. And I was hoping that it was something like this. But yeah, I didn't want to see Hassanin go like that. I like what he's about. He's made of the right stuff.
Yes, he's a Lion, and he's, when we're talking grit, that's the kind of guy that we're talking about, right? If you're wondering why the Lions did that, what was the benefit of that? And Brad kind of went over it in the press conference today. Number one, he said it was the best thing for the player to get him back on the field this season. And number two, it saved us an IR spot. You're only allowed to return 8 guys from IR over the course of the season. And the Lions bumped up against that last year. So I think that affected Brad and Dan a lot in their roster construction this year. And that's why you're seeing some non-typical moves like keeping 50 guys and doing all these things. They are, they're playing 4D chess. They are looking way ahead. And are they maybe getting too cute? I don't know. But they have a plan. And Hassanin's going to be back. Brad Holmes was emphatic. He's going to be a Lion because, to be clear, once he clears the injury designation, so he's on injury waivers. There's a predetermined time that the doctors, Lions, have determined that, say it's an 8-week injury, that he has to be out of that. Once that 8 weeks up, he could sign with any team he wants. He's essentially a free agent. The Lions have to wait an additional 3 weeks. So say it's an 8-week injury, we can't sign him for 11 weeks. We can't have contact with him either. He can't be at the practice facility, that type of stuff. But what that does offer us is that we could put him directly on the practice squad after he comes back. From the way Brad Holmes said emphatically, he's a Detroit Lion, tells me that they have a handshake, my word is my bond type deal. So I'm happy that he's going to be back. And again, Brad Holmes looks, proving Dan Campbell what he said right. Whatever Brad thinks is going to happen, happens.
Right. It does stink that he's going to be missing out being in the facility and everything like that. But I mean, you got to do what's best. And it seems like that's the best move.
Yeah. Well, even if he's on IR, he can't be. If he was on IR, he couldn't be in the. He can't be. I think he.
No,
you can't be practicing. You can't be
in
doing anything. Right.
This treat you can go for treatment, but you can't be like in any team meetings or anything like that, or anything like working out or anything like that. But you can go for treatment, and then that's pretty much it.
Yep. So the one thing that we haven't mentioned that was kind of the last. I mean, for me, the last shocking thing that I saw this week is Tim Patrick being traded. After making the roster, he got traded. Curt, why don't you tell me what you think about that, just in general, and was it shocking for you? I mean, were you a guy that thought he was going to make the roster? I mean,
it was not shocking to me at all. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago, and it was about the Tesla hype train. And I said the one person that's in that could be a victim of the Tesla hype train was Tim Patrick. I just look at him not participating in camp a lot because he had a shoulder injury, coming back, and then what he left the door open for this kid, and what he did in the preseason. Understand that it's against second, third string guys, but he was the number one receiver as far as the lineup for the Lions. He was the number one guy. He played out on the boundary. You know what I'm saying? This kid played he played the slot in college. So you can line him up anywhere. He showed his flexibility as a wide receiver and what he learned in camp. The kid just made some excellent plays. I mean, he catches everything you throw at him. If it's close to him, he's going to catch it. And he's fast. He's strong. Like, he can high point the ball. And I was like, I told my guys over at Boss Up Ball, I was like, if Tim Patrick don't get on the field soon, it's gonna be curtains because this guy's coming. Like the rapper what Jay-Z told his crew at Rock Nation, you better get on the ball because 50 Cent is coming. So you need to do whatever you need to do to get all your music out because this guy is coming. That's what I felt about Isaac Tesla. I'm like, if Tim Patrick don't get himself together, he's going to be a fall victim to that train. And he just couldn't get healthy. He didn't put enough stuff on tape. And I'm like, that was not a shock to me because I was like, I kind of called it. And then I wrote a follow-up article on that yesterday. I was like, Tesla in, Tim Patrick out. And you kind of see that. Like, Dan Campbell kind of tipped his cap on that move because he said he's going to be able to contribute really early in the season. I'm like, yeah, somebody's not. I didn't think it was going to be Raymond because of his role in the return game, as being a punt returner. But the most expendable guy in those top receivers was Patrick. And I'm like, good luck to him down. And because I like Tim Patrick. I like what he brought. Was a gritty guy, made those tough catches over the middle. His big splash play that kind of like introduced him to Lions fans against Dallas when he made that contested catch down the sideline against a Warrior. And I was like, who is this guy? I'm like, okay, I see what you're bringing, Big Timmy, but sometimes, it's not for long. Someone's always coming to take your spot in the NFL. That Tesla kid, like, he was just built to be a Lion. Think about the hometown kids that were, you got Hutch, that's a hometown kid, you know what I'm saying? Like, even though he kind of grew up a Patriots fan because he liked Tom Brady, but, and then you had Kennelly and a lot of those guys, like, I think Whiteside's a local guy.
Yep.
Pittman's a local guy. So, like, you got a lot of local, flavor on the Detroit Lions, like, this preseason. So, but that guy is something special about Tesla. And they saying he was the next Puka Nacua, and he's proven them right. And I like it when Brad went up to grab this kid, the Lions weren't the only team interested in him. The Rams were going for it. Was a couple of teams that interested in that kid. And I think, Brad did his due diligence, man. But the Tim Patrick one, man, I wasn't shocked at all. I was like, there it is. And I just kind of wrote about it. I had another article planned. And when that trade happened, I just scrapped that article and wrote another one about the Patrick trade because I kind of called it. I was not kind of called it like I knew it was going to happen, but I wasn't surprised that it was going to happen because I said, this is the one guy who could fall victim to the Tesla hype train is Tim Patrick.
Yep. Jacob, are you happy with the 6th round compensation that we got for Tim Patrick?
Yes, I think it's okay. I mean, you can't really expect much more than that. They're taking his salary, right?
Yep.
I also want to point out
we paid just to clarify, we already paid out his bonus, which was like half his salaries. They're taking on like 1.2 million, something in that range.
right.
But it was
But I
guaranteed. So
did-
if we cut him, like, if we cut him at cut down day, we were paying him. Getting him for, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, is because when we had this conversation, when we were making our 53, because you had him listed and you listed your roster locks, you had those receivers, you had Tim Patrick. And I said, pump the brakes. I don't think we could call him a roster lock just because we haven't seen him, in practice, in training camp. And what we have seen is that Tesla, his stock is at like an all-time high. Every time you see him, he's getting better and better. So I said Tim Patrick was not a roster lock. And then that's when we had that conversation, like you just said, where you didn't think cutting him was going to be possible. Or you said he was a roster lock because cutting him, we would have to eat that. Turns out he's not a roster lock, but because we're trying to trade him, swapping for a late round pick. So yes, 100%. I'm not surprised by it either. We already, talked about this beforehand. I think Tesla just he's been too good to just ignore. He's warned, he's earned that roster spot. He's earned that chance to get some offensive snaps.
I think so. When I saw him in practice, I saw him at the first open practice. He went over to Gabriel Boodle, he got a contested catch. And I'm like, okay, and I know it's DiCaprio Boodle. He's played NFL corner. It's not like he's some undrafted free agent, okay? Not an amazing thing, but I saw that and I was like, okay. And Dan Campbell said it, ever since the pads got on, you saw the real Tesla, and he showed out in every game. And it wasn't like he was making the catches I want to make. That touchdown with Atlanta where he went up and just high pointed the ball. We haven't had a receiver like that in a while that will do that. I think Marvin Jones is probably one of the last guys, and Kenny Galladay. Those are the guys that would get those contested catch. Obviously, Calvin is the all-time great in that category, but I'm talking mere mortals of Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay. And then when that touchdown in the second game where Kyle Allen threw in the corner of the end zone, he shielded out the defender and caught it with his hands out there. If you watch that play over and over again, because he set that play up so the corner couldn't get to that ball. Either Tesla's going to catch it or it's going out of bounds, and he's setting himself up perfectly. So he just showed out. And then obviously the best worm I've ever seen in my life in the last game. So he probably deserved to be on the roster just for that alone. The only thing that I agree, Tesla's coming and no one's going to stop that train. However, does it worry you at all that, after Tesla, then we got Dominic Lovett and Jackson Meeks behind there. So if there's an injury we might be calling on those guys. Would it have been worth it to keep Tim Patrick on the roster for that purpose only, for depth? What do you think about that, Curt?
I think they got the guys. I mean, like you can bring up Meeks, call him up a couple times. I'm not really, because I don't think he's gonna be because you still got Raymond right there too. Like you should have Raymond on the roster right there. So, and Raymond's a veteran. I mean, and one thing about Raymond, Goff trusts Raymond. Like, how he is with the way he trusts guys. And I think he began to trust Tesla pretty early. I get what you were saying with the depth, but I don't think that it's a concern for me right now, just because of the fact that, the guys ahead of him. Unless the guys just start dropping. Like if J-Mo and St. Brown and Raymond get hurt, then there's an issue. But right now, I like the depth we have at wide receiver, so I'm not concerned.
Yeah. Jacob, why don't you speak on that? Does that concern you at all? Would you have rather kept Patrick for depth? Hey, Jacob, we can't hear you.
Yep, I see it. I don't think so, because last year we had kind of the opposite, where we had all the receivers on the squad. Everybody during preseason, nobody was stepping up. It didn't look like anybody was going to be able to get open. Nobody was going to be able to fill that role. And that's why we got Tim Patrick in the first place. Now, we've got Ronnie Bell on the practice squad. We were able to keep Meeks around. Lovett is out there. Obviously, we already talked about Tesla. I think that we have enough players, we have enough depth pieces that can come in there and actually make an impact this time. Whereas last year, all the receivers, for whatever reason, Donovan Peoples-Jones, any playing time he got, he was just not getting open. He was not catching the ball. You had like Doris Fountain, all the people that were on training camp last year, just none of them separated themselves. And now we had an argument for possibly Bell, Lovett, Meeks, like who was going to get that final spot. They all made a case to actually earning a spot on the roster. And then, Tom Kennedy can always bring him up for a game or two, right?
That's exactly. I could tell you the reason why I'm not worried about that, especially early in the season. We have Ronnie Bell and Tom Kennedy on the practice squad. Are those game changers? No, but those are guys that know the plays. They're veteran guys. They're guys that you could bring up in the case of an injury until Meeks and Lovett develop into whatever they're going to develop in. We don't know that yet. I mean, Meeks is undrafted and probably for a reason. And love it, like you said. I'm concerned about his hands. His special teams play is going to get him on the field. At some point, he needs to sit on Amon-Ra and get on the jugs machine and just go to town. And that's what he needs to do. And if he wants to make it in the NFL, he'll follow that lead, because what other guy would you want to lead the way than Amon-Ra?
How long is TK85 been on the Lions practice? It's got to be at least
I think
10.
It's like 7 years. I think this is his 7th year.
I think it's getting close to 10. Yeah, like 7. I think it's getting close to 10. I'm like, he's been here forever on the practice squad.
I know. He kind of reminds me, was it Zach Zenner? Just like always, just the running back that was just always, just like we knew he's going to be on there. We'll call him up if there's an injury. He'll do his job. He's not going to be anything special. But, TK is there for a reason. He is always one of the earliest guys out. When we're saying at training camp, he's always one of the first guys out there. And obviously, Dan loves him. And he's one of those guys that you like on the practice squad that you could call up and just trust that this guy's going to be in the right spot. And he'll make the occasional catch that you need. Talking of the practice squad, let's move on. Let's hit on that. Jacob, do you want to say, Curt mentioned him earlier, Andre Carter is the guy, the defensive end that we signed today. People may remember that name because he had some hype a couple years ago, undrafted free agent. Jacob, do you want to go over Andre Carter?
Andre Carter, yes, went to played college football with Army. So, I mean, he was a little bit of a hype recruit there because there was questions about whether he was going to be drafted or not. He ended up being undrafted, but he's 25 years old. He's played in 15 career games. This preseason, he was with the Raiders, 2 tackles and a sack. He actually made the Vikings as an undrafted free agent in 2023. So he made the initial 53. So he's been on a couple different teams. This is just, he's a defensive end, right? So this is just another depth piece, a flyer, somebody else they have done extensive research on. And it seems like, he's got that grit mentality and he's got what it takes to be a Lion. So, and this is a practice squad person. So this is not somebody we claimed on waivers that we need to put on the active roster.
Yep. He fills that.
What were your thoughts
spot.
About that?
It doesn't move the needle with me at all. I mean,
right.
It's an intriguing name. It's a name I recognized when I saw it, but it doesn't move the needle with me. The rest of these guys that we are on the practice squad, the reason why I want to go through him is because he's the only new guy. Everybody else has been either on this roster last year or played through the preseason with us. Curt, I want to hit you up because I listened to your show and I have a question for you based on what I listened to your show. You were maybe I don't want, if I got my understanding wrong, you correct me, but you were making a reference for Jacob Sailors over Craig Reynolds. You were excited about Jacob Sailors. So I want you to sell me on why Jacob Sailors instead of Craig Reynolds. Make that sales pitch to me.
I was looking at it like the production in the preseason. I like Jacob Sailors. I mean, I watched him in the UFL. And shout out to my co-host, WTMN TV. That's my man, LL Cool Torrance in the chat.
Nice.
That's my guy right there. So what up, dude?
What's up, LL?
For me, I'm not saying like, I love Netflix, man. He's one of the. I've talked to his dad, a couple of times on social media. I like what he does. I was saying his production was a little bit better, and as far as Sailors than Reynolds was. The last game Reynolds had a good game, but I also said that if you look at what the Lions did with him this offseason, he wasn't going anywhere because of the fact that. He was all over the Lions social media. He went to Germany with St. Brown. But I did say that I like Sailors and he had a really good preseason. I just think the production was a little bit better. But of course, did I think they were going to take Sailors over Reynolds? Probably not. I just like what he brings to the table. Watching that guy in the UFL last couple seasons, man, I think he led the UFL in rushing a couple years. So guy's a phenomenal running back. You look at what he has great vision, great patience. He can catch the ball in the backfield. So he's a good back. I said, if he was signed earlier in training camp, he could have pushed Craig Reynolds for his spot. But of course, man, it's all conjecture because of the fact that I knew that the Lions were all going to keep Sailors over Craig Reynolds, man, just because of they love Craig Reynolds, man. And he's not a bad player. So, it's not like the Will Harris situation. Like Will Harris, for me, like Will Harris must have had some like sex tapes on people or something. Cause like it was here, the Lions kept him like he had something on somebody. Like he had the proof. Like somebody or something. Because of the fact that he just stayed entirely, he was in that roster entirely too long for my taste. I'm like, why do they keep this guy? Like, what do you have on somebody in this organization that they just keep you around? Like, but I like, don't get me wrong, I like Craig Reynolds, man, but I just think the production, you look at the numbers in the preseason and Sailors had better numbers.
I think the things that you don't see with Craig Reynolds that probably aren't in those numbers is he's an excellent special teams player. I'm not necessarily wanting him returning kicks, and I could tell you when Jacob and I went to camp, he just destroyed every special teams rep that it was out there. So I love Craig. I was super happy when Sailors made the practice squad. And I think that you're right. Like if he makes it at the beginning, like he took full advantage of the Lions injuries for them to bring him in. The Lions brought in a bunch of UFL players because they were football ready. And he obviously took the bull by the horns and was able to make the best of his situation. So I don't know if we're going to see him in the season at all, but I am happy that he's on the practice squad, UFL, and now he's on the practice squad. That's what you want to see. That's what I want to see from UFL players, man. They, take advantage of that. They're getting an opportunity and that's why I don't want that league to fold. I like, obviously we got Jake Bates. I mean, it's given certain players opportunities and the Lions keep giving these guys shots in camp because like I said, they're football ready. Like they're already in football shape and, you don't have to worry about ramping them up. They can come out there and play.
I also think Craig just, his locker room presence, what he means to the team and everything just gives him a leg up. But I actually was impressed by Sailors too. I seen his name, I seen him coming through, and I kind of thought, this is probably camp body, somebody that we're just giving an outside chance to show what he's got. And then once we saw him play, it was like, okay, I actually really like that. And I know me and Jason both had talked about this before. There's somebody that I really like, a priority person that I wanted on the practice squad. I wanted to be able to stash him on the practice squad.
Yeah. I mean, he's a guy that, we could bring him up and, get the yards up. One thing I like about Craig is that he's going to be, just straight ahead, get what you get. You're not going to get anything amazing with him. But in that last preseason game, he could catch out of the backfield, make a guy miss. And so I like Craig, and I thought he just had a really excellent preseason. And Sailors took advantage of the opportunity that was afforded to him. Not
Real
much,
quick,
I was like, yeah.
Before you move on, there's somebody that I wanted to mention because this is some a lot of people had predicted this guy to be on the final roster. We were talking about between Lauren Strickland and then Kennelly, like who was going to get that last safety spot. Was one of them going to make it? Turns out neither of them made it. But then Strickland gets on the practice squad. Kennelly does not. Does that surprise you to see that he's not on there? Or do you think just Strickland had beat him out and turns out he beat him out for a practice squad position?
I go back to what you said, Jacob, that when you watch Kennelly, you were never wowed by him. And I think, Strickland had a great end of camp. He had a great end preseason, and maybe was what broke the tie between them. I am shocked that Kennelly didn't end up on the practice squad just for the mere fact that they were giving him first team reps and stuff like that. I thought that he had more potential, and maybe he's going to come back eventually, but he just didn't make the initial practice squad. Curt, you have any thoughts on Strickland or Kennelly?
I like Kennelly, and I like what I saw on Big Kid. You know what I'm saying? Can either thumper with because Strickland was a UDFA last year, I believe. So like he wasn't. So maybe there's that seniority. Maybe secured that spot for him. And but he had that big hit in the game in that final preseason game. So maybe that was the reason why that big pop got him that practice squad spot. So.
Well, Spielman was excited about it, and Spielman, he's got Dan Campbell's ear, so maybe he talked to him and said, "Hey, take my boy Strickland." All right, we kind of already touched on Nate Lynn a little bit. Surprised that he didn't make it. He's still, as far as I know, he hasn't signed with anybody's practice squad, so kind of interesting because I thought he had a good preseason. We may end up seeing him on the practice squad at some point, depending on injury attrition, but I don't know, and we don't know. Is it a Lion decision? Was it a Nate Lynn decision? It was obviously a Lion decision not to put him on the 53, but, it's ultimately after that, Nate can sign with whoever he wants.
I mean, the rumors that I heard anyway were that, the idea was to get him back in the practice squad, and he declined. But now, circumstances change. I don't know how. I mean, he's looking for a job, right? I don't know how that works. Is he being selective, or is the phone not ringing off the hook? So what do you do from here if you're Nate Lynn?
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, do we want Andre Carter over Nate Lynn like we had that last spot? Or, that's interesting to me how that all shook out.
That's back to what I was saying in the beginning, though. Like, because we've seen Nate Lynn. Well, we know we have with Nate Lynn. He showed some promise. He was already, he had a year under his belt, right? So, why not keep that guy on the practice squad? So then for him not to be on the practice squad, and we're going to bring somebody else in that's kind of more random or whatever, somebody we don't have as much experience with, doesn't make sense to me on paper. So it has to be that Nate Lynn just decided, I'm going to explore, I don't know if he's waiting on an injury or if he thought something was going to open up quicker.
Yeah, it's interesting. We will never know the answer to that. I'm not going to know. So, Curt, I think, we've kind of wrapped up this roster pretty good. I wanted you to give the people, tell them, when they could find your show, where they could find your show. And I know you're writing for the Sideliner too. So make sure you talk about that as well.
Yeah, definitely. You can find me on the Boss Up Ball Out podcast on our YouTube channel, man. Myself, Coach Jones, the Wolver Lion, and LL Cool Torrance, who's in the chat. We do a recorded show Mondays and Wednesdays. I go live usually on Fridays. I won't have a live show tomorrow. I have a scheduling conflict, but might set it up this weekend. Might do a live this weekend. And I write for Sideliner Sports, which is a new up and coming sports page. So, with content, and they, tried out for one role and got another one. So they wanted me to come on, and be a contributing writer. So doing that, love that content over there. So just go check that stuff out, man. It's Sideliner, SIDELINR. So no E at the end. So Sideliner Sports. So go check that out, man. We have a lot of fun over there. It's from a fan, it's like a fan point of view. So you won't get a lot of technical jargon over there. You'll get some good insight from a fan perspective on Sideliner Sports.
Okay. Love it. Yeah, go check that out. Check out his show. I listen to each one of them. I'll be excited to get on that show, hopefully in a couple weeks here. I'll be excited to join that.
We're chomping at the bit to have you. We're ready to have you on.
I've been listening. I've been studying up, so I know how to attack, Wolver Lion and LL. So, I get, attack their weaknesses. No, it's all fun. And, Curt, this has been a long time coming. We've had you on the radar for a while, and, you've been doing this for a while. We just started last year. So, I'm glad that it worked out now. I'm glad that you kind of initiated this, and, hopefully we could, work together. Obviously I'm coming to the show, but, you're welcome to come back on here anytime.
I appreciate it, Jason, man. Good to see you, Jacob, man. Good to meet you, man. You guys, man, following you guys for a little while. I'm like, these are up and coming guys, man. You watch out for these guys. They're going to do some good things, man. And shout out to Justin Rogers, man. When I first started out in 2018, he was my first interview.
Oh, really?
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. He was early on for us. We had him on last year, and I've told this before. I've talked to Jeremy Reisman about this. The Justin interview was the most nervous I ever was going in to something until we talked to Tom Grassi. Then I was pretty nervous about that. But Justin just knows his stuff, and if you're not on your stuff,
yeah,
I just wanted to have a good showing, and hopefully we did. But Justin's a great guy. He certainly, you talk about having from a fan view, he doesn't take that angle. He's not a fan of the team. He'll tell you that right now that, this is his job. And so he looks at it a lot different than a guy like Jeremy Reisman or Eric Schlitt, who
I love those guys. Those guys been on
those two guys do amazing content, but they are certainly fans of the team. They have that lens, and that's okay. We need all those guys. You need all those guys, and they all do superb jobs. Justin Rogers, member of his, I've subscribed to his service because he does a lot of things that not a lot of writers do. He will give you a lot of the background information on guys that you just don't know about, and his content is very unbiased, and I could trust what he's a true journalist. That's the way I look at Justin.
Yeah.
And Jeremy and Eric, they do things at a different angle, and I love those guys too. And they've been so helpful to us, Jacob and I, in this podcast, and just in this realm. And
great guys.
And
Great guys.
They're just good guys, and then we took on, there's a new podcast called Passing Time. We had those guys on. And so like, I think of this, one thing I've learned in this podcast realm is that like, if everyone just helps each other out, it makes everybody better, makes your content better. And that's just the way that Jacob and I early on wanted to, obviously we're newer, so we're not going to big time anybody, but we were, a guy like you that's coming on the show that's been doing this for a very long time. We appreciate it. And
thanks.
It's been just a great Lions community and just a good podcast community.
Yeah. Keep reaching out to those guys, man. I've had Math Bomb on my show. He's a former, the guy who does all the RAS scores. He's a former Detroit Lions content creator. He wrote the Sideline Report. Check out with Ben Raven. That's my guy over there, man. Benjamin Raven's a good dude too, man. Corey Woods. Let's keep reaching out, man. Keep doing great content, man. You guys are doing a great job, man. And you're going to continue to grow, man. We're going to see you guys on the big stage one day, man. See you get credentialed or something like that, man.
Yeah, getting the credentials. That Jacob and I talked about that, when we first started. And honestly, that's, my brother runs a huge media thing. And so when the draft was in town, he told me afterwards, he's like, I could have got media credentials for that. And I was like, how do I get media credentials? And then, we started thinking about the podcast, and that's when the POD cast went down and all that stuff just in my head. I'm like, I'm missing a void, because those guys, when they left a void. They were like my friends. And, and then it's turned into this.
Friends.
We're having fun. We've met a lot of good Lions. I've learned so much about football and just Lions in general that I'm happy where I'm at right now. But of course you want to keep growing, and we're having fun. And this is the most live chat that we've had, right, Jacob? So this is
right. No, that's been great.
Awesome. So
appreciate everybody.
Kurt brought his crew, man. He hooked them up.
Showing out for Kurt.
Man. Yeah, man. These my guys, man. I know Ronan in the chat, man. I know JK, man. I see those guys in Lion Talk Live in the morning. So a lot of these guys, man, I appreciate them. They've, I go back a ways, man. They've been rocking with me since the Lions on the Pride. Even Broski Bear, the guys in the chat right now, that's my guy, man. Like, those are my people, man. So they ride with you, man. So if they ride with you, man, if they ride with you, I'm riding with you guys. They're gonna keep coming back.
Well, we appreciate it. I hope any new listeners out there enjoyed it. And I think there's just one thing left to say, and that's go Lions.